All right, let's do it. A deep dive today into email spoofing. You've sent us a ton of research on this, so looks like you're ready to get into the nitty-gritty of how this all
It's
works.
crazy, right?
Yeah, we're going to explore not just the how, but also the why it's so effective. And most importantly, how you can avoid falling victim to these digital con artists. Are you ready to dive in?
Absolutely. It's fascinating, how attackers prey on our ingrained trust in something as commonplace as email. We'll break it all down. Look at some real-world examples and equip you with the knowledge to navigate your inbox safely.
Sounds good. So let's start with the basics. We all get a zillion emails a day. What exactly makes an email spoof?
All right, so imagine this. You get an email that's like the spitting image of a message from your bank or a trusted colleague, right?
Uh-huh.
That's email spoofing in a nutshell.
Okay.
Attackers manipulate the from address, make it look like the email is coming from a legit source when it's actually,
Mhm.
a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Okay, so they're just like faking the sender address. That seems almost too easy to like pull off these scams.
Well, it's the foundation, but there's a lot more to it.
Okay.
Think of it like a magician's act.
Yeah.
The fake from address is the grand illusion. But the real trickery lies in the techniques they use to lure you in.
Mm-hmm.
They often employ phishing tactics, crafting urgent messages or requests for sensitive information, anything to trigger like a quick emotional response. That kind of bypasses your critical thinking.
Yeah.
You know,
That's where the human element comes in, right? We've all been there. You see an email that seems urgent, and you react without really thinking.
exactly.
You mentioned a Google Docs attack in our prep notes, and that one really spread like wildfire. What made that one so successful?
Oh, the Google Docs attack.
Yeah.
A true masterclass in spoofing.
Mm-hmm.
Attackers sent out emails that were practically indistinguishable from genuine Google Docs sharing invitations.
Wow.
The kicker.
Yeah.
These emails often appeared to come from people you knew. But clicking the link didn't take you to a document. It led to a cleverly disguised fake login page designed to steal your Google credentials.
Wow. So it had that double whammy of looking legit and coming from someone you trust. No wonder it tricked so many people.
Exactly. We're so accustomed to, clicking links and responding quickly that it's easy to let our guard down.
Yeah.
But that's what the attackers are banking on.
So knowing this, how do we avoid getting snagged? Besides, swearing off email forever and living as digital hermits.
Well, there's always that option,
Yeah.
but there are definitely less extreme measures.
Okay, good.
One of the most important things is to really scrutinize the sender's email address, like it's a suspect in a lineup.
Uh-huh.
Look for even the slightest misspellings, extra characters,
Mm.
or anything that seems remotely off.
So for example, if an email seems to be from like Amazon.com instead of Amazon.com, that would be a huge red flag.
Absolutely. Attackers often use these subtle variations, hoping you'll just skim over them. Another critical tip is to hover over any links before you even think about clicking.
Oh, yeah.
This will reveal the true destination, URL, if you will.
Mm.
If it looks suspicious or doesn't align with what the email claims it should be, steer clear. That's your digital spider sense tingling.
Yeah, I've definitely been guilty of clicking links without thinking twice.
We all have.
Especially when you're like, in a hurry.
Exactly. But that extra second of verification can save you from a world of trouble. And remember, when in doubt, verify directly.
Okay.
If you get an email that seems even slightly fishy, especially if it's asking for personal information, don't hesitate to contact the sender through a trusted channel, like a phone number or a website is legitimate,
Right.
not one provided in the email.
So trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is.
Precisely. Your intuition is a powerful security tool. And always remember, legitimate organizations generally use professional language and grammar. If an email is riddled with typos, odd phrasing, or just has a weird vibe, consider that a massive red flag.
Okay, so we've covered checking the sender's address, hovering over links, and verifying with the sender directly. What other signs should we be on the lookout for? What are some of those subtle cues that can give away a spoofed email?
Okay. Pay close attention to the greeting. Does it feel generic and impersonal? Like, dear customer, instead of using your name.
Yeah.
That's a sign that the sender might not actually know you. Legitimate organizations that you have an account with will usually address you by name.
Okay.
Also, be wary of requests that seem out of place or unusual. Would your bank really ask you to confirm your password or other sensitive information over email?
Right.
Probably not. That's a classic phishing tactic designed to steal your data.
These are really practical tips. I'm already starting to feel more aware of the potential dangers lurking in my inbox, but besides our own vigilance, what role does technology play in combating email spoofing? Can we rely on our trusty spam filters and antivirus programs to do all the heavy lifting?
Technology definitely has a critical role to play. Think of it as your, digital bodyguard. Strong spam filters and phishing detection tools can be your best friends in this fight, catching a lot of these malicious emails before they even reach your inbox. So make sure they're enabled and up to date.
Okay.
It's like having a security system for your email.
Right, but it sounds like it's a combination of being vigilant ourselves and having the right tech in place, kind of like a two-pronged defense strategy.
Exactly. It's a multi-layered approach to security.
Right.
But even the most sophisticated technology isn't foolproof.
Right.
That's why staying informed and aware of the tactics attackers use is so crucial. It's about empowering yourself with knowledge so you can make smart decisions online.
Going back to our source material, I noticed that it briefly mentioned organizations needing to step up their game, too.
Oh, yeah?
What do they mean by that? Is there something more that businesses and institutions can be doing to combat spoofing?
Absolutely. It's not just about individuals protecting themselves. Organizations have a responsibility to protect their users and their own systems from these attacks.
Right.
And they can do that by implementing specific technologies that act as a sort of digital bouncer for their email systems.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about these digital bouncers. What are they and how do they work?
There are three key technologies that organizations can use to boost their email security: SPF, DCAM, and DMRC.
Okay.
They might sound like a bowl of alphabet soup, but they're actually quite straightforward and incredibly important. In the fight against spoofing, they all work together to verify sender identity and prevent those fraudulent emails from slipping through the cracks.
Okay, so let's unpack those acronyms. What exactly do SPF, DCAM, and DMRC do?
All right. Imagine SPF as setting up a guest list for your email server. It's like saying, hey, these are the only servers allowed to send email on my behalf. If an email comes from a server that's not on the list, it's immediately flagged as suspicious, like someone trying to sneak into a party without an invitation.
Got it. So it's like a way of verifying that the email is actually coming from where it claims to be coming from.
Yeah.
What about DCAM?
DCAM is like adding a digital signature to your emails, a tamper-proof seal. That verifies the message's authenticity. It adds an extra layer of authentication, making it significantly harder for attackers to, forge or spoof those emails.
Yeah.
Think of it as a way of ensuring that the email hasn't been tampered with in transit.
So SPF is like checking the return address on an envelope, and DCAM is like making sure the seal hasn't been broken.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And then we have DMRs, which acts as the final judge, tying everything together. It tells receiving email servers what to do with messages that fail, those SPF and DCAM checks.
So it's like the bouncer at the email club deciding who gets in and who gets bounced out based on those SPF and DCAM credentials.
It's exactly.
By implementing these technologies, organizations can drastically reduce the risk of email spoofing attacks, creating a much safer environment for everyone. It's about creating a more trustworthy and secure email ecosystem overall.
This is a lot to take in, but I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together to combat spoofing.
Yeah.
We've got individual vigilance, robust technology on our devices, and these behind-the-scenes security measures implemented by organizations. It's a multifaceted approach to a complex problem.
It really is. But understanding the different layers of defense is a huge step towards staying safe online. Remember, knowledge is power. And in the world of cybersecurity, knowing your enemy is half the battle.
And speaking of knowing the enemy, let's dive a bit deeper into the psychology behind these attacks. Why are they so effective? What makes us so susceptible to falling for these scams? That's a great question. And it gets to the heart of why email spoofing is so insidious. Attackers are masters of manipulation, and they exploit our inherent trust in authority, our fear of missing out, and our tendency to react emotionally in high-pressure situations. Let's unpack some of those psychological tactics that make us vulnerable.
Perfect. Let's get into the minds of these attackers and understand why their strategies are so successful.
So, one of the most powerful tools in the attacker's arsenal is something called authority bias.
Okay.
We're kind of naturally inclined to trust figures of authority, whether it's a government agency, a bank, or even a respected colleague.
So that explains why seeing an email that appears to be from your bank or your boss can instantly trigger that, oh no, I need to take care of this right away,
Yeah,
feeling.
exactly. Attackers exploit that instinct by spoofing addresses from those very authorities,
Hmm.
knowing that we're less likely to question or scrutinize an email. That seems to be coming from a trusted source.
It's almost like our brains go into autopilot mode when we see those familiar names or logos.
We drop our guard because we just assume it's legit.
Precisely. And once they've established that sense of authority, they layer on the pressure with urgency. They'll craft messages that create a sense of panic, make you feel like you need to act immediately to avoid some negative consequence.
Like those emails that say, your account has been compromised.
Right.
Click here to verify your information now, or your account will be suspended.
Classic example. They prey on our fear of losing access to our accounts or facing financial penalties. And when we're in that state of like heightened anxiety,
Yeah.
we're much more likely to make impulsive decisions without really thinking things through.
It's like they hijack our rational thought processes with these like emotional triggers.
Yeah.
We're so focused on avoiding the perceived threat that we don't stop to question whether the email is even legitimate in the first place. That's exactly it. It's all about short-circuiting our critical thinking skills. And that's why understanding these psychological tactics is just as important as knowing the technical details of how email spoofing works.
So in a way, it's about training ourselves to be more mindful and skeptical of any email that tries to evoke a strong emotional response.
Exactly. Take a breath, assess the situation calmly, and look for those red flags we talked about earlier. If something feels off, it probably is.
That's a great point. It's all about taking that pause to regain control of the situation before reacting. Now, you mentioned earlier that email spoofing is just one piece of the larger cybercrime puzzle. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, spoofing is often like the entry point, the way attackers gain your trust to set the stage for more elaborate schemes. It's like the first act in a play, setting up the plot for what's to come.
So they use spoofing to kind of get their foot in the door, and then they escalate from there. And what kind of schemes are we talking about here?
Well, think about the broader landscape of cyber threats. Malware,
Right.
ransomware, social engineering scams.
Right.
They all kind of like feed into each other. And spoofing can be a crucial element in many of these attacks.
So, for example, they might send a spoofed email with an infected attachment.
Yep.
And once you download it, bam, you've got malware on your computer.
Exactly. It's like a Trojan horse tactic, using deception
Yeah.
to deliver a malicious payload. Or they might use spoofing to initiate a social engineering attack,
Okay.
tricking you into revealing confidential information, or even like wiring money to a fraudulent account.
Like those CEO fraud scams we hear about,
Yeah.
where someone impersonates a high-ranking executive and requests an urgent transfer of funds.
Prime example. Those scams can be incredibly convincing, especially if they've done their research, crafted a believable email that mimics the CEO's communication style.
It's scary how sophisticated these attacks have become.
It is.
They're playing on our trust, our fear,
Yeah.
and even our willingness to help.
That's right. And they're constantly evolving their tactics, finding new ways to exploit human vulnerabilities. That's why it's crucial to stay informed and adapt our defenses accordingly.
So it's an ongoing process, a constant cat and mouse game between the attackers and those of us trying to protect ourselves.
In a way, yeah. But it's not just about technology. It's about fostering a culture of security awareness.
Mm-hmm.
It's about training ourselves to be more critical thinkers,
Yeah.
to question assumptions,
Yeah.
and to verify information before taking any action.
Right. It's about being proactive and empowered rather than reactive and fearful.
Absolutely. We all have a role to play in creating a safer online environment.
Yeah.
And it starts with understanding the threats and knowing how to defend ourselves.
So to circle back to email spoofing specifically, what are some of the most common objectives of these attacks? What are the attackers ultimately after?
It really varies, depending on the specific attack
Yeah.
and the attacker's motivations. Sometimes it's about stealing sensitive information, like login credentials, credit card numbers, personal data that can be used for identity theft.
Right, that makes sense. Those are the digital crown jewels that attackers are always after.
Exactly. Other times the goal might be to just spread malware, disrupt operations, or even just sow chaos and distrust.
So it's not always about immediate financial gain.
Nope.
It could be about causing larger scale damage or undermining trust in online system.
Absolutely. The motivations can be complex and multifaceted, but understanding the potential goals of these attacks helps us to better anticipate and defend against them.
Right. It's like knowing the enemy's playbook so we can develop effective counter strategies.
Exactly. Knowledge is power. And in the world of cybersecurity, the more you know. the better equipped you are to protect yourself and your digital assets.
So we've talked about the technical aspects of email spoofing, the psychological tactics used by attackers, and kind of the broader cybercrime landscape. Now, I'm curious to get your take on the future of this threat. Is email spoofing here to stay?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't have a crystal ball.
Right.
But I can say that as long as email remains
Mm-hmm.
a primary mode of communication, attackers will continue to exploit it.
Yeah.
It's low-hanging fruit, a relatively easy way to gain access to sensitive information or launch further attacks.
So we're stuck in this perpetual cat and mouse game.
To a certain extent, yes. But the good news is we're getting better at fighting back. Technology is evolving, awareness is increasing, and we're developing more sophisticated defenses.
That's reassuring, so it's not a hopeless situation.
Definitely not.
Oh.
But we can't afford to be complacent.
Right.
Attackers are also becoming more sophisticated, using AI machine learning to craft even more convincing spoofed emails.
So it's an arms race, a constant battle to stay one step ahead.
Precisely. And that's why ongoing education and adaptation are so vital.
Yeah.
We need to keep learning, sharing knowledge,
Yeah.
and updating our security practices.
Okay, so we know the threat is evolving, and we need to stay vigilant. But aside from like the technical measures and the awareness tips we've already discussed, are there any other steps people can take to protect themselves?
Absolutely. One of the most effective defenses is simply being aware of the threat.
Knowledge is power, as they say.
Exactly. If you know what to look for, you're far less likely to fall victim to these scams. But beyond that, there are some practical steps you can take to make yourself a less appealing target.
Okay, I'm all ears. What are some of those extra layers of defense we can put in place?
So one simple but effective strategy is to limit the amount of personal information you share online.
Okay.
The less information attackers have access to,
Right.
the harder it is for them to create,
Yeah,
convincing spoofed emails.
that makes sense. It's like reducing your digital footprint. Make yourself a smaller target for those phishing expeditions.
Exactly. And be mindful of the links you click and the websites you visit. Stick to reputable sites
Mm-hmm.
and be cautious of
Right.
anything that seems suspicious.
So essentially, practicing good digital hygiene,
Yeah.
being aware of where you're going,
Sure.
and what you're clicking on in the vast expanse of the internet.
Precisely. And if you're ever unsure
Mm-hmm.
about the legitimacy of an email or a website, don't hesitate to contact the organization directly through a trusted channel. Don't use any contact information. Provided the suspicious email, look it up independently.
Right, so verify, verify, verify. It's always better to be safe than sorry.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And don't forget about those organizational measures we discussed earlier, SPF, DKIM, and DMRC.
Mm-hmm.
Encourage the organizations you interact with to
Mhm.
implement these technologies.
Right.
It's about creating a collective defense against spoofing.
Right, because it's not just about protecting ourselves, it's about creating a safer online environment for everyone.
Exactly. Cybersecurity is a shared responsibility.
You got it. Well, this has been an incredibly insightful deep dive into the world of email spoofing. I feel like I've gained a much deeper understanding of the threat and, more importantly, how to protect myself.
I'm glad to hear that. Remember, knowledge is power, and awareness is your best defense.
Absolutely. So to our listeners out there, stay vigilant, stay informed, and don't be afraid to question anything that seems suspicious. Your inbox is a digital battlefield, and
Right.
you are the commander-in-chief.
Well said. And remember, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is.
That's a golden rule for navigating, not just the online world, but life in general. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today. This has been an incredibly valuable conversation.
It was my pleasure. Stay safe out there.
And to you, our listener, until next time, keep exploring, stay curious, and remember, knowledge is power. Happy and safe emailing.